Hello everyone. So today I'll be presenting my work on self-supervision and controlling techniques to improve counter-speech generation. I am advised by Professor Animesh Mukherjee from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, IIT Kharagpur, India. So before moving forward, again, I would like to point out that this material may contain something that is offensive or hateful. However, this cannot be avoided owing to the nature of this work. Now, as you all know or are at least aware of, that hate speech is a global problem now, and it has been spreading across a lot of online social media platforms. It is usually a language used to express hatred towards a target individual or group, and is intended to be derogatory or to humiliate or to insult the members of the group. Now, there are different strategies that can be applied to the mitigation of hate speech. The first strategy can be inaction, that is not responding to the harmful or hate speech. Then deletion, that is the common strategy that is applied now, like banning or suspending the user account. That is done in most of the online platforms. And the last one is counter speech, that is directly intervening with textual response that can counter the harmful content. Now, why do we need such a mitigation strategy? So one problem with the suspension or removal of post is it is a threat to doctrine of free speech. And many platforms which are moderation free tend to focus on this. So they do not allow suspension of the post. And secondly, counter speech can act as a first line of response before other intervention techniques takes place. So what happens when banning, there are several stages of like moderation, and difficult post can take 1 or 2 days to moderate in that way. But with counter speech, you can easily write something that can at least have some sort of an initial response to the hate speech problem. Here is an example which shows how counter speech is being written. But the blue examples are the examples of counter speech, where they show that using race and religion respectfully to attempt to prove a point is ridiculous and offensive. Recently, there has been several campaigns around this, that they are trying to write counter speech in the online world, but all these are NGO-based like endeavors, and this adds to the challenges of content moderation. We want in this work to find out how we can use natural language generation to help the moderators in this task. So primarily, if you look at the task, it is more or less a response generation problem, which uses hate speech and then passes it through a transformer-based models, that is GPU2 or T5 or even like modern transformer models, and finally aim to generate counter speech. There are several papers which are trying to do the same thing over like past few years. Like first papers tries to generate counter speech after detecting hate speech. There are papers which are trying to fine tune on different data sets. And finally, there are papers which are trying to make the counter speech more relevant. But there are still some problems. The first problem is lack of personalization. So when we talk about moderators, they might have some preference over the content they are generating. And hence, in these models, if we just generate the relevant examples, it might not be preferable for the moderators. And the second problem is that these models are often data hungry. So if you want to train such a model, we will need a lot of data. So how do we train in case there is a lack of data in these cases? So for the first problem, we want to analyze if we can add additional control to make the framing of the counter speech better. Before moving to the like technical parts, I want to motivate why controlling the tone is important. So it is seen that sentimental or casual tones receive 83% more response. And in a past work around counter speech, they found that different communities actually find different types of counter speech effective. Finally, empathy-based counter speech can help reduce the racist comment more effectively than other forms. So there has been a few data sets which have the hate and counter speech pair, and this can be used to train such a response generation problem. But one problem with this data set when applying to this controlling part is that none of the data sets have additional labels to control the tone. So even if you want a supervised task, this is difficult in this case. So instead of that, what we propose is we can use some additional attribute controller models. So we are not getting any supervised signal from the data set. So what you can do, you can use such models which can control the attributes. So in this pipeline, one is the simple counter sweep generation model that can be the transformers model or the response generation model. And the second part can be the attribute controller models. This attribute can be anything. For this work, we have only focused on detoxification. That is not trying to generate toxic speech in response to a toxic speech. Politeness to generate more polite or empathetical counter speech. And finally, emotion, which can be one of the 4 emotions that we tried, like joy or sadness. And finally, there is an output token selector, which tries to take in the preferences from both these models, that is counter switch generation, as well as the JEDI models, that are the attribute controller models, and generate a particular token, which is not only relevant, but also have the required attributes in the output. Now, these are the emotions and these are the attributes that we are controlling. As is the case, emotion can be used to generate diverse responses. Sadness can be used to show affiliation with the target communities. Joy can be used to convey positivity. Anger can be used to express disagreement with the speaker. Similarly, politeness can be a step towards more empathetic counter speech. And finally, detoxification can minimize hostile behavior or slur words in the generated response. So to train this data set, as I already mentioned, we do not train these models, we do not have the signals in the data set. So we use this additional attribute data sets so that we can train these signals, like what is polite or what is toxic or what kind of emotion is present. So for these, we have different data sets that are publicly available. Now we trained these JEDI models for each controllable parameters, and finally use this JEDI models in 2 settings. One is single attribute control, where we have a single JEDI models with the response generation system, and multi-attribute control, where we have several such single attribute JEDI models with the response generation system. So we then evaluated our setup on 3 different models. The first 2 are the baselines. That is, one is the state-of-the-art baseline, which generates only relevant examples or responses. That is, generate prune select architecture. This is a 3-stage pipeline approach, which first generates, then prunes some of the non-grammatical sentences, finally select the more relevant examples. And in the baseline 2 is just the native or the vanilla response generation problem, which is a dialogue GPT model. It is a variant of the GPU2 models that are there, trained on Reddit dataset. And finally is our model known as counter JEDI, which uses these attribute models additional to this dialogue GPT model. For evaluating our approach, we use several generation metrics. These are novelty, diversity, BLUE for relevancy analysis, and COLA for fluency. And we also use some third-party classifiers so that we can evaluate whether the text actually contains such attributes or not. So for politeness, emotion, detoxification, we have a separate classifier that is again available publicly. And we use that classifier to understand whether this text actually contains the attributes or not. So first of all, the baseline results. So we find that overall the generate prune select architecture and dialogue GPT performs comparably. And since the dialogue GPT is more simple, and it has higher novelty and diversity, we thought that it can be used to better control the outputs. Hence, we moved forward with this dialogue GPT model. Although the system can be easily applied to the other models as well. So in terms of score, we find that we have increased the score of politeness and detoxification by 15 to 18% and 6 to 8% respectively across all the data sets. And for the emotion attributes, we find that joy is one emotion that is easily controllable. We find that there is a slight drop in the relevancy and fluency, but overall they are quite stable when we are controlling the text. When you use multi-attribute setups, we find that there are certain complementing attributes. Like if you see the first row of every data set, you will see that it actually improves upon the single attribute scores. So complementing attributes can be used to further increase the single attribute setups. So the key observations are that few of the attributes are very easily controllable, like joy, emotion as joy. And joy is also the dominant among the generated responses, and it is easier to control. We also observe that with multi-attribute setups, we can use complementing attributes for to further increase the single attribute setups. And there is, although a slight drop in relevancy and fluency, but overall they are quite stable. We also evaluate our approach with humans and try to understand if the attributes that are present are actually seen in through public eye. And we found that overall across different metrics, humans actually judge the control models as better, having better attributes. We also show some examples and highlight the parts where we feel the models have been controlled, like we are using politeness as please do not, sadness as hurt even more. So these are the parts which are being added by the model, apart from the normal counter speech. So now the second problem, that is data hungry models. Now, in this task, our primary aim is to find out what we do in case of we don't have much data. So we can use some similar tasks to pre-train the models first. So what can be such similar tasks? So we are in the process of searching this. So one task can be argument and reply pairs. So argument and reply pairs can be thought of a similar setup as hate speech and counter speech part. And in this case, we can use this argument reply pairs during pre-training and then use the later like hate speech, counter speech pairs during fine tuning. So here the plan is to use different data sets like Arguna or Create Debate to get the argument data set online, and then filter the counter argument pairs if they're already not filtered. So we want the replies which are counter argument to one another. And then we want to pre-train the generation models on these data sets. Apart from that, we also want to include different evaluation metrics. So currently, overall in the counter speech pipeline, we do not have such metrics which can directly say if the counter speech quality is good or not. Hence, we use different metrics like referential quality, that is blue or meteor that I already showed. Quality metrics, so we can use argument quality metrics or counter generation quality metrics. And finally, we can also use engagement metrics, like whether the post that is response that is there will be upvoted or not, or will be liked or not. So those metrics can also be used to evaluate the counter speech generated. So in conclusion, we discussed two main problems of counter generation, also their solution. So the first problem, that is personalization, where we propose a counter Jedi model which can control 4 emotions, politeness and detoxification. This is accepted in ICHKAI 2020 last year. And the second problem is lack of data, where we propose to use similar data sets. One example can be argument data sets to pre-train the already available generation models, and we'll see if they improve the performance over in the next few months. So these are the links to the paper on of ICHKAI, and also the GitHub repository. You can check it out. And thanks. I'm open for questions.